We've been reading how Savitri is ready to stand up and oppose all the dark powers in the universe. A force in her that toiled since earth was made, accomplishing in life the great world plan, pursuing after death immortal aims, repugned to admit frustration's barren role, forfeit the meaning of her birth in time, obey the government of the casual fact, or yield her high destiny up to passing chance. In her own self she found her high recourse. She matched with the iron law her sovereign right. Her single will opposed the cosmic rule. To stay the wheels of doom, this greatness rose. At the unseen's knock upon her hidden gates, her strength made greater by the lightning's touch, awoke from slumber in her heart's recess. It bore the stroke of that which kills and saves. Across the awful march no eye can see, barring its dreadful route, no will can change. She faced the engines of the universe. A heart stood in the way of the driving wheels. Its giant workings paused in front of a mind. Its stark conventions met the flame of a soul. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. All now seems nature's massed machinery, an endless servitude to material rule, and long determination's rigid chain. Her firm and changeless habits, aping law. Her empire of unconscious deft device, annul the claim of man's free human will. He too is a machine amid machines. A piston brain pumps out the shapes of thought. A beating heart cuts out emotions' molds. An insentient energy fabricates a soul. Or the figure of the world reveals the signs of a tide chance, repeating her old steps in circles around matter's binding posts. A random series of inept events to which reason lends elusive sense is here. Or the empiric life's instinctive search. Or a vast, ignorant mind's colossal work. But wisdom comes, and vision grows within. Then nature's instrument crowns himself her king. He feels his witnessing self and conscious power. His soul steps back and sees the light supreme. A Godhead stands behind the brute machine. This truth broke in a triumph of fire. A victory was won for God in man. The deity revealed its hidden face. The great world mother now in her arose. A living choice reversed fate's cold, dead turn, affirmed the spirit's tread on circumstance, pressed back the senseless, dire, revolving wheel, and stopped the mute march of necessity. A flaming warrior from the eternal peaks, empowered to force the door denied and closed, smote from death's visage its dumb absolute, and burst the bounds of consciousness and time. Sway. Martin, would you begin, please?
The force in her that toiled since earth was made, accomplishing in life the great world plan, pursuing after death immortal aims, repugned to admit frustration's barren role, forfeit the meaning of her birth in time, obey the government of the casual fact, or yield her high destiny up to passing chance.
So a force in her, in Savitri, there is a force that has been at work since the earth was made, since the beginning of the earth history. And that force has been accomplishing, carrying out in life the great world plan. And after the human life is over, pursuing after death immortal aims, the aims of immortal beings. So that force in Savitri repugned to admit frustration's barren role. It felt disgust and refusal to accept the barren role, the fruitless role of a person who is frustrated. It refuses to give up, to forfeit, to yield up the meaning of her birth in time. Savitri has taken birth with a mission, and in her human life, her birth, there is a meaning, a significance. She's not going to allow that to be bypassed. She's not going to obey the government of the casual fact. We human beings, sometimes we just have to accept the way things are, the way that they just happen to be. But Savitri is not going to accept anything like that. She's not going to yield up her high destiny to passing chance, to this chance fate that Shraddhavan must die. She is not going to accept that. This word repugned is an unusual one, no? It's connected with repugnance, with disgust. Chandra.
In her own self, she found her high because she met with the iron law, her sovereign right. Her single will opposed the cosmic rule to stay the winds of doom this greatness does.
Yes. So she doesn't need any help. She finds her recourse, her help, all the resources that she needs in her own self. She is able to match this iron law that seems to govern the material universe. She opposes that with her sovereign right, her right to rule things, the spirit's right to rule nature. So her single will, the single will of her individual self, opposes the cosmic rule, the way things are in the universe. And this greatness, this force in her rises up to stay the wheels of doom, as if disaster is a great chariot that's just moving on its way unstoppably. But she stands up in front of it and stops it, to stop the wheels of doom. This greatness rose.
So can you explain again the sentence matched with the iron law?
Yes, so there seems to be something like a law which is so strong it can't be changed. The rules of physics, the rules of the material world, and that says that Shraddhavan has to die. All the circumstances are like that. But this iron law she matches it. She is equal to it, equally strong. No? Her sovereign right, her right to rule, to be master of nature. She matches that against this iron law. That's what we see her doing in Book 10. Sarojini.
Though unseen enough, upon her hidden gates, her strength made greater by the lightning touch, wake from some
Slumber.
in her heart's
Recess.
It bore the stroke of that which kills and saves.
Yes. So this force in Savitri has been woken up because there's a knock on the gates of her being, the hidden gates of her inner being. Her strength is made greater by the lightning's touch, this kind of shock that she's received when she learns that Shraddhavan must die has made her stronger, not weaker. And so that force which has been sleeping in the recess, the deep place in her heart, has woken up. And that force is strong enough to bear this stroke of lightning, this knock of the unseen on the inner doors. That power can destroy and it can save. She's able to bear it, and so it doesn't destroy her, it makes her stronger. Dhanalakshmi.
Across the awful march no eye can see, barring its dreadful route, no will can change. She faced the engines of the universe. The heart stood in the way of the driving wheels. Its giant workings paused in front of her mind. Its stark conventions met the flame of the soul.
Yes. So this engines of the universe, this machinery of universal nature, it's as if it's said the wheels of doom. No? It's like a great locomotive moving forward. But we don't see it, that march forward of those engines of the universe. Perhaps they're like robots, mechanically moving forward, threateningly. But across that dreadful march, which we can't see, she bars its dreadful route. The route of those engines, the way that they must go, is fixed. It says no will can change them. But Savitri faces all that machinery, that dreadful machinery. She faces it with her heart, her human heart, stands in the way of those driving wheels of doom and bars the way. So that whatever it is, that awful march, its giant workings, actually pauses. It doesn't run her over. Her will is so strong, that force in her is so strong, that these giant workings, the inevitable workings of the universe, pause, faced with a mind, a conscious mind. It has to pause because of the strength of this heart that's there. And its stark conventions, these agreements on how the universe must be, they are so stark and strong and they can't be changed. But they find themselves faced with this flame of a soul, this flaming will, this immense energy. That's what happens in the case of Savitri. But in the next sentence, Sri Aurobindo expresses that this is something that can happen in a more general way. You would read, please, Joel?
A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled, ineffable, timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lowly thought becomes omnipotent.
It's quite an important philosophical question. There's the transcendent realm, the realm of eternity and infinity. Can we human beings have any effect on that eternal plane? All the people who become aware of that transcendent plane, whether they are mathematicians or philosophers, or in whatever way, that awareness of the fact that there seem to be eternal laws which are ruling things on earth. Can any human being, or even all human beings, have any effect on those eternal laws? And here Sri Aurobindo says, yes, it can happen. A leverage can be caught. Now we associate this word with Archimedes, the Greek engineer. He said, if you give me a firm place to stand and a fulcrum and a long enough lever, I can move the earth. So a lever is something that helps you to move something that seems immovable, huge boulders or all kinds of things. So here he says that kind of leverage can be caught, which moves even the timeless will, the eternal will of the ineffable, of that highest reality, supreme reality, which we can't express in any way. A prayer from a human being, or an action, a master action, or an idea, some wonderful, strong idea, can make a connection between our human capacities, our human strength, to that transcendent force. And when that happens, miracles happen. Miracles even become, he says, common, become the common rule. But even if it only happens once, one mighty deed can change the course of things. I have seen this happen, so I know it's true what he's saying. How things, the balance of power seems to be all on one side and nothing can change it, and just a small gesture, and there's this intervention from the transcendent force, and the impossible becomes possible. So he says, this is possible, it can happen. Then the lonely thought of one individual becomes all-powerful, not in its own individual strength, but because it's linked to that transcendent force. Alice, would you read?
All now seems nature's massed machinery, an endless servitude to material rule, and long determination's rigid chain, her firm and changeless habits aping law, her empire of unconscious deft device, unknown the claim of man's free human will.
Yes. If we look dispassionately at nature, this is what we see. No, everything seems to be organized, determined by the rules of nature, and it seems as if that machinery, we have no power against it at all. We seem to be endlessly compelled to serve the rules of matter, the laws of matter. And there's this long chain of cause and effect since the very beginning of the universe, which determines how we feel, who we are, what we do, what we think. We have very little control about that, if any at all. There's this long, rigid chain of cause and effect. And there's these firm and changeless habits aping law. We call these the laws of nature. But Sri Aurobindo says they are not laws. They're just habits, pretending to be law, looking like law. Aping means copying. Habits can be changed. Nature is so skillful. She's so clever. And yet we feel that she's unconscious. All the marvels that she's created in the material world are unconscious, deft. It means skillful, clever, even with small things, tiny details, with her devices, her tricks and her little tools. So that's what rules us. And if we see things like that, then we think that we cannot claim really to have free will. We feel that we have some power of choice, but even that choice seems to be determined by nature, how we perceive things, how we think about things. It's all the effects of something that's happened in the past. So if we look at a human being, he's also a machine amid all the other machines of nature. The brain is just like a piston pumping out thoughts, shapes of thought, which are already determined. The heart, it feels emotion, but those things also are already determined. And we feel that we have something like a soul, but it's just a product of nature energy. Makes us feel like that. Or another way of seeing things is in the next sentence. Sorry. Leila.
Or the figure of the words reveals the signs of a tight chance, repeating her own steps in circles, their round letters binding posts.
So there's the perception that everything is random and happens by chance. But there does seem to be some kind of limit to the randomness. So it's, Sri Aurobindo likens it to the kind of paths that an animal makes. If it's tied to a stick, it will move freely, it'll wander here and there, but it cannot go any further than the length of its rope. Or perhaps it's tied to a rope that's tied to two ropes, so then it will have two posts, so then it will have a little freer movement. But still, I think scientists have now developed a theory about this. It's part of chaos theory, the way that these matters, binding posts, things happen apparently randomly, but that randomness is limited by the laws of physics. But nevertheless, there's something unpredictable. So it's a chance, random, but it's tied. There she is, going around and around and around these stakes, these limits set by matter. Murugan.
A random series of inner events to which reason lends illusive sense is here, or the empiric life's instinctive search, or a vast ignorant mind's colossal work.
These are different theories that people have had about what determines our worlds. One view says that everything is completely random, and it's only our viewpoint that gives it, that makes it seem to have some kind of center or significance or meaning. A random series of inept events, just helpless events without any significance or meaning. But our reason interprets them, gives them a sense which is just an illusion, really. Maybe everything that we see is meaningless. Or perhaps what is driving our world is life. Life trying everything possible out instinctively. Or perhaps all this is the creation of a vast, ignorant mind. These are different ways of looking at the world. Will you read, please?
Wisdom comes.
But wisdom comes, yes.
wisdom of different within the nature instrument calls itself to increase his witnessing self-conscious power. Soul steps back and sees that realm supreme.
One more line.
All things stands before vision.
Yes. So in the course of our soul development, our individual evolution within the context of nature's evolution, a time comes when we achieve or realize something we can call wisdom, true knowledge, which is based on vision and knowledge by identity. Wisdom comes and vision grows within. That's what happens eventually. And then this machine, this human being who is just the tool of nature, can crown himself her king. He can learn truly to control nature, not just mentally, but in a much deeper and more significant way with the power of the soul. Then that one, that human being, feels his own witnessing self, which sees everything that happens in the universe and knows his own conscious power, the power that he can exercise with his own consciousness. His soul steps back from the appearances of the world and sees the light supreme. Then he knows that a Godhead, a divine being, is standing behind this apparently unconscious, even cruel machine. Lady at the back, would you like to read? Would you like to read? Would you read?
Yes. This truth drove in a dream of fire. Victory was won for God in man. Died to reveal its hidden face. The red world mother now in her hours. Light and joyous reverts, fate's call, then dawn. The spirit's threat on circumstance. Pressed back, the senseless dive rewarded with unsuspected the new march of necessity.
Thank you. So this truth which is evoked in these last lines, this truth that there's a divine power and intention behind what seems to us to be a brute machine. This truth broke in Savitri, in a triumph of fire, of powerful energy. A victory was won for God, for the divine. That victory was born in humanity, and that hidden Godhead revealed its hidden face. In Savitri, the great world mother now arose, possesses her instrument, and a living choice, Savitri's living choice, turns around, reverses fate's cold, dead turn. Fate is what we feel that we can't alter, that it's something fixed. It has to happen and can't be avoided. And fate has decreed that Shraddhavan must die. But Savitri is able to change that. She's able to affirm and to demonstrate that the spirit can change circumstances, that this ever-turning wheel of karma, of cause and effect and consequence that just keeps going round and round and round, she's able to stop that in its turning, and she can stop the silent march of necessity, of what can't be changed, of what has to happen. She can change that. You read?
The flaming warrior of the eternal bliss, empowered to hold the goal denied and good. Moved from death, distance is downward subdued, and where's the dawn of consciousness within.
Yes, so this flaming warrior, this is Savitri, and she's come from the peaks, from the highest levels of consciousness, and she's come empowered. She's been given the power to change things, to open this door that seems to be permanently closed. She is able to strike off from the face of death its dumb absolute, this mask that it's wearing, which gives it the appearance of being something absolute, powerful, which can never be changed. No? She's able to break all these barriers of consciousness and time. So in these lines, as the close of his summary, his introduction to the whole poem, Sri Aurobindo reveals to us that Savitri will succeed in her mission. Well, it's not a secret. Right at the very beginning, he tells us that she's going to be triumphant.
But Shraddhavan, when I read and forward to force the doors and line and close, when Mother opens the golden door, 29 February.
Yes, these lines make us think of that special day, no? Of course, the lines were written long before that, maybe 10 years before that. But we have this image of the mother's experience of 29th February 1956. After the meditation in the playground, she saw herself standing in front of this vast door, denied and closed, the door that hasn't been opened. And she had in her hand a huge hammer, and she struck one blow on the door, and the door opened, and all the supramental light and power poured down on the earth. So that is for us a very, very significant date, and it seems to be described here. And of course, Mother has made a sketch of these lines, which show her like that, facing the door, about to strike the blow.
But at this time, I tell you, Shraddhavan, in France, February, there are a lot of snow. A lot at this moment. And I remember, but I don't understand. The end of February, I am incredibly happy. I don't understand why I am happy.
That happiness. Yes.
And my father, my mother, my two brothers is incredible. I never show a lot of that. Alors, always, I remember this moment.
Yes, so you're very blessed that you were aware of something at that moment. Mother has spoken about a few people who in one way or another, without knowing what they were aware of something on that day. Somebody in East Africa, and Amal Kiran saw her in the train on the way to Bombay, and so on, like that handful of people who were aware, who felt something. A force in her that toiled since earth was made, accomplishing in life the great world plan, pursuing after death immortal aims, repugned to admit frustration's barren role, forfeit the meaning of her birth in time, obey the government of the casual fact, or yield her high destiny up to passing chance. In her own self she found her high recourse. She matched with the iron law her sovereign right, her single will opposed the cosmic rule. To stay the wheels of doom this greatness rose. At the unseen's knock upon her hidden gates, her strength made greater by the lightning's touch, awoke from slumber in her heart's recess. It bore the stroke of that which kills and saves. Across the awful march no eye can see, barring its dreadful route no will can change. She faced the engines of the universe. A heart stood in the way of the driving wheels. Its giant workings paused in front of a mind. Its stark conventions met the flame of a soul. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. a lonely thought becomes omnipotent. All now seems nature's massed machinery, an endless servitude to material rule, and long determination's rigid chain, her firm and changeless habits aping law, her empire of unconscious deft device annul the claim of man's free human will. He too is a machine amid machines. A piston brain pumps out the shapes of thought. A beating heart cuts out emotions' modes. An insentient energy fabricates a soul. Or the figure of the world reveals the signs of a tide chance repeating her old steps in circles around matter's binding posts. A random series of inept events to which reason lends elusive sense is here, or the empiric life's instinctive search, or a vast ignorant mind's colossal work. But wisdom comes, and vision grows within. Then nature's instrument crowns himself her king. He feels his witnessing self and conscious power. His soul steps back and sees the light supreme. A Godhead stands behind the brute machine. This truth broke in a triumph of fire. A victory was won for God in man. The deity revealed its hidden face. The great world mother now in her arose, a living choice reversed fate's cold dead turn, affirmed the spirit's tread on circumstance, pressed back the senseless dire revolving wheel, and stopped the mute march of necessity. A flaming warrior from the eternal peaks, empowered to force the door denied and closed, smote from death's visage its dumb absolute, and burst the bounds of consciousness and time.